Hi guys, George here. Before I begin part 3 of Defensive Luga, I'd like to have a little shout out to my friends, to my son's friends. Freudian slip there. My son is my friend, my best friend, yep. So a shout out to my son's friends, just to thank them for watching and sharing this video. Um, hasn't been easy. Hasn't been an easy life for me. Going through school, being picked on, rejected, considered a dummy. So I had a lot of challenges, and I wish you all a happy, long life, and I hope you get the opportunity to play along the way, whether that be video games or board games. Of course, um, I truly feel that you should take some time to learn some of these board games that are lengthy in rules, a little bit more complicated, but um, you need some uh, brain power to play them. It certainly helps to keep the um, Alzheimer's away. So, with that said, on to um, how the Russian and German player can uh, play this scenario better, and what are some of the lessons learned. So, we'll start with the Russians. Now, the Russians have a formidable force, as you can see here. Let me zoom in on it on this SSF here, uh, scenario starter. So, I would suggest that everybody includes the Russian balance in playing this game, and that's the addition of a 10-0 Commissar in the Russian OB. When you look at the OB, the Russian OB, there's four leaders. Now, no matter what kind of attack you choose, my suggestion to you is keep these guys in their rear. You use them um, mostly for rallying your troops rather than to advance them. Then you have 24 regular first line squads, 447s. Um, those folks can be used for a variety of tasks depending on the strategy that you choose. And then you have conscripts, and my recommendation for the conscripts, the use of the excuse me, the use of the conscripts, the primary focus should be um, mopping up operations. And the 628s, quite sincerely, I would designate those as the carriers of the light machine guns, um, because it gives them a firepower, combined firepower of 8 or 6 for 4 hexes away. And then the MMG should definitely be carried uh, by a 447 because they have the maximum amount of uh, movement points, and the Russian MMGs are 5. Okay. Now, these tanks have to uh, waltz in using platoon movement. So again, depending on what strategy you use, they should be allocated a different task. Now, what do I mean by strategy? If you look at the board, uh, let's do a little bird's eye view here. You do have quite a few options available to you. You have the option of advancing into the board on a wide front, or choosing one of the two boards here, right? Now, if you were to choose this board, depending on how well or not well the German player um, set up, it gives you the opportunity to do a nice wide left hook into the city board. On this end, all right, if you choose this just coming in on this end, um, then you have the opportunity to gain these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stone buildings here, and then you have an additional 11 to take care of, not including this one. Well, this one also counts as a stone building, but it's a considerable detour just to get one building. I would, if my focus was the village, I would then try and focus on here. Um, so there's a wide variety of choices here. Let's go back to the Russian OB and let's take a look at the tanks, sorry. Gee, I'm mispronouncing a lot of things today. Oh well, tanks. Alright, now the units with the most amount of movement points are these units here, which are BT7s. I would use them for reconnaissance. So basically, enter the board here. Right? Let's put them there. And this guy is right behind. That unit's right behind the other one. T-34 has a considerable amount of armor. And this fellow too, I would put this unit here as one of the key vehicles that should enter the board and conduct a wide thrust. Okay. Now, these units here, the 152 and the 276, the 76 millimeter there are T-28s. Oh, forgive me if I got that designation wrong. I literally need a magnifying glass to read these counters these days. Yeah, T-28Es. Alright. Now, what is presented here is rather interesting. Because they have a great armor factor, and so does the KV-1. Now, if you're interested in getting a height advantage and being able to lob some firepower all over the village in order to support your infantry, what I would suggest to use these two types of tanks would be get them into the village, right? Okay. Get them into the village, but at the same token, avoid any hexes or send your troops in ahead to clear the buildings that from where an armor assault can be launched, right? Street fighting can be launched. So I have those two tanks there. They would form a platoon right there. Okay. And there is a couple of 628s. Let's give the 628 some. Whoa. Let's see. 1, 2, 5. All right. Right. Okay. Let's give him some LMGs. 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's an ATR. So hey, give him the ATR. It's just 1 portage point. All right. Leader. Give him an 8-1, or even Fedorov. Fedorov would be great. Why? Because Fedorov would increase their morale to a 9, making them very hard to eliminate on morale checks alone. So let's put them in an armor assault fashion, right? Right there. LMGs first. And they can, a good question would be, can they armor assault while going CX? I don't see why not. Anywho, so this group here would be entrusted to wreak havoc on the village if there are any Germans hidden in the village. Now the remainder of the troops, I would set them up here. Oops, let's see. I would set them up coming along this edge, being the main assault. Okay, so you have the hammer and the now I forgot what the heck the other item would be, because the other item would be an anvil. The hammer and the anvil. I was thinking hammer and sickle because of the Soviet flag. Okay, hammer and anvil. Here you go. I would advance the regular infantry along these lines here, okay, on board 4, and there is quite a few spaces where they can trickle in and completely out of the view of the German player. And then I would just advance these units ever so slightly in order to flush out the Germans. Now, I saw a comment somewhere on the net saying that, hey, the easiest way to flush out the Germans is just to do a wide attack. Well, there's a problem with that approach. The problem is your victory conditions are not to flush out the Germans. The victory conditions are to capture 16 stone buildings, 16 or more, right? So what you ultimately want to do is completely bypass the German positions as much as you can, capture those buildings, right? Get into those buildings and ensure that they are not recaptured again. Okay. Now that's basically it. I'm not going to fiddle around with the rest of the units because I pretty much gave you a scope of what would be going on. Now let's take a look at the German position, right? And what choices does the German player have? Hey, that's my Facebook page. Let's go back to Vassal. All right, there we go. Okay, so um, we can set up as far forward as L, which is a bummer in some respects, okay? It is a bummer. I'll explain why. So if you wanted to set up a forward defense, you're looking up to hex row L, right? It's a bit of a bummer because this is an ideal ambush point and it's in K, right? Anywho, you got 13 first line squads and 6 crews, which is important. It's important because you can deploy. So deploying, I believe I would add 13 plus 6, that makes 19. Fractions rounded up, that would give you 10% fractions rounded up, that would give you at least 2 units you can deploy. And that would be interesting. What else would be interesting is instead of manning your guns with regular crews, right? You can man machine guns and HMGs with crews instead. And what benefit would that give you? The benefit would be that crews can self-rally, right? Let's remove that DM. He can self-rally. So the mediums are 3 portage points, so he can take them with him when they break. Not true for the heavy though, right? So you can have a defense where, all right, a retreating defense. You have a rear guard, and it gives the Soviet player something to think about, right? So what if there's a penalty on the AT guns for being manned by a squad? Either way, the one thing you should not forget is bore sighting, right? Again, I'm going to make reference to the old game. Unlike the old game where the player can say, well, we haven't reached the bore sighting rule yet, so we have to exclude that. In ASL, the first item for grabs that you need to consider when you have AT guns and HMGs and MGs is bore sight those weapons. Okay? Now let's go back to the board, and before going any further, we need to say that the German has 3 choices: either a forward defense, right? A rear defense, and if we're talking about a rear defense, is just covering the approaches into this city board, or an in-depth defense. And what do I mean by in-depth? I mean that there's a couple units here, right? and a couple units perhaps mid-board, and a few units in the rear. Okay. Uh, I'm going to show you. I'm going to go through the board and show you some good ambush points. Okay. So the first good ambush point I would suggest is right here. Okay. So right there, I would put a squad with a light, or even a medium, because you can have you can trigger um, a nice, geez, the word will come to me. Don't worry. Um, yeah. Well, you put the unit here. He's basically covering any approach to there. Now let me take a quick look at the rule book. So I figured out the word that I was looking for. A fire lane. So if you put an MMG in there, right, create a fire lane, you're good. Okay. Now the other area that's pretty good for a nice ambush. Okay, let's take one of our LMGs again, and the squad, and put this fellow in here. I would have to think twice about that, because there's a considerable amount of hindrances here, right? Yeah, a considerable amount of hindrances. So that's something to think about. In terms of the AT guns, I like this shell hole hex right there. Okay, it gives you a coverage here and coverage along this direction. The other point that of interest would be here. Okay. Notice I haven't shown any leaders yet. Okay, so these are all nice areas to ambush people. Another beautiful area would be down here with an LMG right there. Okay. Another area where you can ambush, of course, would be in this building here. Right, so if units advance across this road, you got a LOS to them. All right. Now, in terms of protecting the city board, I definitely recommend a second level HMG there. And a second level HMG there. Sorry. And possibly manning them with a 9-1 leader each, or even a 9-2. Okay. Nice place to ambush another couple of squads would be let's deploy these leaders out there so we see what kind of resources we have left. Is here, the stone building here, right? And if the Russian player decides not to take this building, you can simply let the Soviet player advance and then circle back behind and try to retake some of the buildings. Why not? Right? Okay. So we have a couple of leaders left, and actually no shortage of leaders. Um, you can, at this point, you can either set up ambushes around the village board, okay, or or uh, deploy a rear defense as well, somewhere along these lines. And there's a lot of choices to be made. So basically, um, I have no idea why anybody would say that this scenario is boring. It's hardly boring at all, either if you're playing it as the Russian player or the German player. There's a lot of movement. There is a lot of replayability because it will never be the same game twice. I'm sure of that. And it's also an interesting piece of history where um, the German players found themselves in a bit of a predicament and uh, in a situation where they really had to be smart in using their AT guns to defend against a Russian armor that was quite heavy, quite heavy. Um, so it is a scenario where you have to use your brains and always keep in mind that what the victory objective is. Do not go for casualty victory points. This game is not about casualty victory points. If you do so, you stand a good chance of losing, whether you're the German or the Russian. You really have to use your wits, keep your wits, and keep focused on the victory objective. And believe you me, if you're playing this game correctly, there will be a lot of events that will arise that will test your patience and test your ability to stay focused. Well, that's all I got to say about Defensive Luga. I'm playing a couple of other interesting games that for which I hope to have an AAR for shortly. We're playing a couple of games in Yanks, and if you give me a moment, I will tell you which scenarios are those are in question. Um, so Defiance and Hill 30, I am playing extensively, and the other game that I hope to start playing soon is not the Butchhold Station, but um, Hitdorf on the Rhine. And Hitdorf on the Rhine is another interesting scenario where both the German and the American player have to play smart in order to win, and there is different strategies that you can use. Now, the main difference between the classic game and the advanced game, and and with respect to that scenario, is that you can't just spread any amount of factors of mines everywhere. They have to be a certain proportion. You can you can allocate different mine factors between booby traps and mines. So you got a lot of choices to make, and making the smart choices, I think, is the most rewarding part of playing Advanced Squad Leader. So that's it for my rant. I hope I didn't exceed my 15-minute limit. I want to keep it short and sweet and to the point. And thank you for watching again. I appreciate all the viewers and all those that have taken the time to subscribe. Thank you for the support. Give it a thumbs up if you like it. Give it a thumbs down if you don't. And give me your thoughts. Thanks. Take care. Bye.